start recording and share my screen. So I put the math problems in here. So usually the biggest issue with the math is that when are you supposed to use the vial of heparin and when are you supposed to use the bag? And if you don't pick the right thing, obviously you're not going to get the right answer. So you always use the vial of heparin when you want to give a bolus. So that would be the concentration that you're concerned about. And you always use the heparin bag, that concentration, when you are worried about the infusion. So if you didn't pick that right, then right away you're going to have an issue. So the first one is calculate the bolus dose and provide how many milliliters you want to give the patient round to the nearest tenth, which you do for usually all of these problems for the bolus or the infusion, is round to the nearest tenth. Okay, so the question is, here's our patient. Our patient weighs 78 kilograms, and they're to get their first, calculate the bolus dose and provide how many milliliters. So that's the first one, and round to the nearest tenth. So the bolus dose is 20 units per kilogram, and they weigh 78 kilograms. So that's 78 kilograms times 20 units. And 78 times 20 is 1,560 units of heparin that I have to give. So I need to find out the milliliters that I need. And so the concentration of the vial is 1,000 units in 10 milliliters. And 10 milliliters. So I can get rid of the units, and so I'll end up with the answer in milliliters. 1,560 times 10 is 15,600 divided by 1,000 equals 15.6. So that was the answer for that one. The next question is the same patient who weighs 78 kilograms. Now we need to know what the initial rate is. How are we going to start this? So the patient we're supposed to start this at 10 units per kilogram per hour. So they weigh 78 kilograms times 10 units. So we're going to have to give them 78 times 10 is 780 units per hour. So that means we're drawing this from the infusion, this concentration, this heparin bag. So we're 25,000 units in 500 milliliters. 25,000 units in 500 milliliters. So then we're left with milliliters an hour. So 780 times 500, 780 times 580 times 500 is 390,000 divided by 25,000 is 15.6 milliliters an hour. So now we have a new patient, and this new patient weighs 220 pounds. So the first thing we have to be sure of is that we're converting to kilograms, and that might have been an issue if you didn't catch the pounds and kilogram thing. So we have to divide 220 divided by 2.2. So our patient weighs 100 kilograms for these particular problems. And again, we have our orders that we're giving a one-time bolus, and we need to know how many milliliters to give, and our one-time bolus is 20 units per kilogram IV, and that means we need to take it from the vial because it's the bolus. So our patient is 100 kilograms, and we're giving a one-time bolus of 20 units. So 100 times 20 is 2,000 units, and it's that same vial that had 1,000 units in 10 milliliters. So it's 2,000 times 10, which is 20,000, divided by 1,000 equals 20. So we're going to give 20 milliliters. Next one, again, this is the patient that weighs 100 kilograms. We're going to calculate the heparin infusion rate at the beginning, rounding to the nearest tenth. So we're supposed to start the infusion, the drip, at 20 units per kilogram per hour, and this patient still weighs 100 kilograms, and instead we're going to use the bag because this is the constant infusion rate, or the heparin drip. So we're 20 units per kilogram per hour. This patient weighs 100 kilograms times 20 units per hour. So we're 2,000 units an hour. And that infusion bag is 25,000 units and 500 milliliters. So it's 2,000 times 500 equals 1,000,000, divided by 25,000 equals 40 milliliters an hour. Oops. So the last question, here we have this patient. They're currently getting the infusion at 30 units per kilogram per hour. So that is their current. Time has passed. They're getting it at 30 units per kilogram per hour. And lab has come and drawn the PTT, and the result is 75. And our order is that if the PTT is greater than 70, then we have to decrease the heparin drip by 5 units per kilogram per hour. And so we're at 75. So we have to decrease that by 5 units per kilogram per hour. So now we have to calculate the drip if it's going to be going at 25 units per kilogram per hour. So 25 times 100, because that's how much our patient weighs, is 2,500 units per hour. And we have to use the bag again, which is 25,000 units and 500 milliliters. So 25,000 times 500 is 1,250,000 divided by 25,000. Oh, wait a minute. Sorry. Is 50. So those are the math questions. Did anybody have any questions on the math questions now that they've seen them worked out? Or maybe you didn't have an issue with that, so it wasn't a problem, but is everyone okay with that? At least it makes sense right now. Okay. Good. And it was kind of mixed. Some people got them all correct. Some people didn't get them correct at all. Some people got half. So I just wanted to be sure that people were understanding that. So we'll get rid of that. All right. The next thing we need to do is look at our schedule. So here we are today. We are really almost done. It's kind of crazy. So we had our exam. We're going to go over what is due in the next coming weeks. I did look at how people did on that practice ATI and have some general feedback based on the things that most people got wrong. We'll go over the last bit of lectures today. And then, so that's today, exam 5, these lectures. And then before we start, we're going to go over what the last 2 assignments are. The discharge assignment, which is the authentic assessment, is worth 10 points. And the discussion board, you only have to post once, and that's worth 5 points. Next class. Oh, I thought I divided you up, but I don't see it on this thing. So I'll have to redo that part. Next class is the ATI final exam. And we were in Bayshore in the school in room 14, and we're divided in 2 groups, which I thought I put on there, which I did not. So I will post that. Oh, good. I'm glad. So you can see where you're lined up. The first group will show up before 9 would be, I know, it's crazy. Before 9 is better, just, a little bit before, just so you can be sure you're logged on to ATI correctly, that you can see the tests, because there's always a little bit of like computer confusion in the beginning. When you're taking the exam, you are given a piece of scratch paper that you have to put your name on to return. When you take the exam, it's not like the practice ATIs where you get the answer right away, like the actual answer to the question. You are never given the answer to the question and are unable to review it. I myself have not seen any of the versions of the exam. I am not allowed to answer any questions or help you with any interpretation of the questions themselves. I'm just supposed to be walking around and be sure you're staying on the exam. If you're on the ATI exam, there is a calculator built in to the exam, and that's the one that you should use. I would allow a plain calculator, but you could not use a graphics calculator or your cell phone. And in fact, all cell phones will have to be in the front of the class, out, so I can see that they're all present. Because if you would have actually had me in a regular class setting, I have everyone put their books their book bags, whatever they have, to the front, and all phones out so that I can see them all and we count them. So that's how I would do it for ATI. You will be assigned seats because you have to be spaced out. So you can just find your seat and get your computer going and kind of get your bearings. If you are doing the test, I will repost it. There's it was supposed to be on the bottom of the schedule. It did not save there. So I will be sure that everybody has it after lunch. When you're taking the test, you cannot click out of the screen. If you do, it boots you off the exam, and I have to allow you back on. And I would be not really wanting to allow you back on because there's absolutely no reason to have clicked out of the exam. So don't do it. When you're done, you will get your score, so you'll know if you leveled. Again, level 1 is 85% to 100%, and that means that you get the full 90 points. Level 2 is 71.7% to 83%, and that means you get 72 points. Under that, you'd get 0 points. And then I see a question here. All the YouTube videos, and in fact some other YouTube videos too that I've done for the other section and for the last semester's class when we had to frantically switch to online in March, are on my YouTube page, which is just listed as Kathy Schultz, and there's a stupid cartoon picture or whatever there. So you're free to look at any of those. None of that has been deleted. And then the final exam is the 24th. That's our last class. That is not proctored like the ATI. It's done from your home. It's 100 questions. Each are worth 2 points for a total of 200 points. And that you get 3 hours to take on your computer. Excuse me. Any questions about what's coming up? And then I'll talk about the assignments that are due for next week.
I'm sorry, you said it was 120 points for the final or 120 questions. I'm sorry.
That's okay. 100 questions.
Oh, okay.
And then each question is worth 2 points.
Okay.
Um, and it's predominantly multiple choice and math. I don't even think that there is any of the short answer stuff. Maybe a true or false or two.
Okay.
And then, so that is worth 200 points. And then remember, you need 700 points to pass the class. Just if you're trying to keep track of what you have left. So you have the potential 90 points from the ATI, 200 points from the final exam, and 15 more points uh, on the last assignments. And there is a final exam study guide that I'll also post at the end of today or sometime today, which I see somebody asked a question about that. Okay, so assignments coming up.
Hold on a second. You said the ATR was how many points again? 80 or 90?
90.
90. Okay. Thank you.
If you get level 1. So you can kind of figure out how much you need to focus. I would, like I've said before, I mean, I've kind of recommended focusing on the ATI the full semester, but obviously it's the end of the semester, so I would schedule your time out in the remaining week you have to study for it. So here we are. That's our schedule. We have 2 more assignments. The medication teaching for discharge assignment is due. This is a video that you will post to our Padlet. So you'll see there's a little link here for Padlet, which I think I have here. Just go to that there. There we go. Okay, so here is that link that you see on the assignment takes you to this page. And this is where you will post your short video, should be under 5 minutes, giving teaching about the medication that you were assigned. And that is due by August 14th. You just have to hit this little plus sign, and that's how you can upload here, hitting that arrow, whatever video you want to put up. So if you want to know what medications you were assigned, I can show you that. So if you go in here, each student is assigned 2 medications. One medication is what you will teach about, and one medication you will give feedback on. So on our Padlet site, whatever medication you were assigned, you can see yourself on this list. The first column is assigned medication for original teaching. You will give the name of the medication and exact directions for administration, how the medication works, common side effects of the medication, and how to deal with those side effects if the person can. I mean, sometimes you just have to know about it. And common adverse effects of the medication, when to call the prescriber or provider. These are so basically the things that we've talked about in class about each medication in a way that would be helpful for a patient, almost as if you were discharging them and teaching them about the medication. So you would, prepare yourself and make that video and upload it onto the Padlet site by August 14th so that your partner, the one that was assigned to give you feedback, has an opportunity to view it and give you that feedback. So you are assigned a specific medication to give feedback on, just so we're sure that all the videos are at least viewed by somebody. And then that is where, after you view the video that somebody made, you would then give feedback on a discussion board. So you would say, this feedback is for whichever classmates. I think that I would add some of this information, or I would take this part out, blah, blah, blah. Kind of like I've been asking for the graded discussions this whole semester, that when you give feedback to somebody, it's actually something that will help them improve giving teaching to a patient. So you only have to post once. So that's 5 points for your feedback that you were to the student you were assigned, and 10 points for that teaching that you would upload onto our Padlet. So say you uploaded your video and you're trying to do your discussion and it's getting down to the wire, and for whatever reason your classmate hasn't posted, then I would give you the opportunity to post on somebody else. I wouldn't make you miss your discussion board because somebody else didn't do their assignment. So it would be really good if nobody would have to worry about that situation and everybody would post their videos before August 14th so that everyone has time to do their discussion post by August 17th. Any questions about that? The other thing is that the medications that are listed that are reviewing are also, you will find on the final, not all of them because there's obviously more medications than people in the class, but they're also medications that you will find on the final study guide, so it might be a little bit helpful, hopefully. So that's what's coming up. Okay, and that's where you can post stuff. To see if someone has a question. There is typing going on. I thought somebody was typing. Because otherwise then we will go, I have a little, all the PowerPoints for today's class are attached to our Outlook calendar, because again I'm having issues loading more content into our site. Even though I deleted a bunch of the videos, it still won't let me do it. So I do have some information. When I looked over the practice tests results and what the class tended to get wrong, there were a couple things that people had in common. So I just have this for you guys as a reminder for some information. Some of it was stuff we did in the beginning too. There were several questions about how to handle medication errors. So it's a good idea to look at that stuff. Our textbook for the class goes into 10 rights of medication administration. The patient, drug, dose, timing, route, documentation, and then, so that's on ATIs, the 6 rights. And then we add the right to refuse, the right for education, the right for an assessment, and the right for evaluation from our textbook. So if the order says, and you might have different policies wherever you work, if the medication order says give this medication at 7:30, then you have between 7 o'clock and 8 o'clock to give the medicine. It's 30 minutes in either direction. Because there was a question about the patient had this such and such antibiotic, and it was, is it given outside, or how late or early can you give it? So for ATI, you only have 30 minutes in either direction. If an error takes place, there were a couple questions about what to do with an error taking place. You have to first assess the patients. I think there were like 2 questions where somebody got a blood pressure medication when they're not supposed to, and somebody got a blood sugar medication when they weren't supposed to. So you do need to tell the provider right away that there is an issue, but the provider is going to want the most important information related to that medication before you call them. So in the case of the patient who got the blood pressure medication, your first thing to do is assess the patient's response to a blood pressure medication they were not supposed to receive. So the answer to that question was assess the blood pressure. The one that was someone got metformin or something that they shouldn't have gotten, the first thing is to check the blood sugar and then inform the provider. Those are very close to each other, but the provider is going to want to know that information, regarding that. The rules per ATI is that you would then inform the charge nurse that you made this error so they are aware, and then fill out an incident report. So that is the correct order. We talked about it in class. We talked about how the assessing the patient and informing the provider, those are all things that you would also document. It's not something that you hide that an error was made, because you want to be sure that there is a record of what happened, that you were aware of the error and took care of it appropriately. The incident report is the thing, yes, I'm recording. The incident report is the thing that you have 24 hours to write out. It's everything that happened, because sometimes errors are common and it's a system issue. That's the thing that goes to risk management to be sure that the hospital knows what's going on. So keep that in mind. Incident report is the latest thing, and that is the thing that you have 24 hours to do, and that goes to the hospital risk management. It is not part of the chart. If there is an error, you're assessing the patient for data directly related to the medication that was given in error or whatever happened in error, then you're telling the provider. So that's important, because there were a couple questions about that. There was one question, or there sometimes is a question about the immunization schedule for children. So I just sort of attached this. A lot of the immunizations are clumped in the beginning, the first year. So just kind of, this might help just to review that a little bit, because we talked about immunizations in general, but we never went over timing of immunizations. In terms of what to do first, medication-wise, when someone has an allergy, there was a question about that. You always give epinephrine first, because that is the medication that will support the blood pressure and open up the airways. So takes care of oxygenation and circulation. So that is always the first thing to give before anything else, even though all of the medications listed might have been given. It's another handy table that might help you with the medication and antidotes if a patient overdoses. Not all medications have those, but these are the ones that we've kind of talked about. Tylenol is acetylcysteine, narcotics is naloxone, benzodiazepams is flumizanil, which we did not talk about in class, and I know that was on there. Cholinergics, atropine, heparin, protamine, Coumadin, vitamin K. Alteplase is that Amacor. We talked about digoxin, dingabine, methotrexate, leucovorin. Iron we just talked about is deferoxamine. So just be sure that you're keeping those in mind, because that could show up. And then we don't really talk about this much, but they always seem to put this on ATI, and that's emergency management of acute intracranial swelling. You can give somebody IV mannitol, and mannitol is a very heavy carbohydrate. It's heavy sugar, so that when you give somebody mannitol and you increase their blood sugar, that creates an osmotic pull. So if inside the blood vessel, the concentration inside the blood vessel is very high, because you gave this heavy sugar, then any cell, the fluid will be pulled out of the cell to go into the vessel, which is good for the brain, because the brain is swelling. The cells of the brain are swollen. So if I give this heavy sugar, I can very rapidly pull fluid out of cells in the brain to bring the swelling down, because obviously there isn't room in the brain for swelling because it's in the enclosed skull. The issue is, though, that now I have to remember that the patient has an increase of fluid volume inside their blood vessels. So for some people that won't be a big deal if they're otherwise healthy, but other people might not be able to handle that much extra fluid. So the problem is it could lead to fluid overload. And so what you have to monitor for is signs of fluid overload. And so the question they asked about it was, what are you looking for? And the answer was whether or not there was fluid in the lungs. Yes, it will affect the blood sugar too. And so in general, the patient is going to need extra medications to deal with the aftermath of the mannitol. So they'll probably get like a sliding scale insulin dose, and they might get Lasix to help get rid of the extra fluid. But you can very, very rapidly decrease intracranial swelling, so you just deal with the fallout later because you don't want the patient to die. So just so you understand what that is. You can also give mannitol for acute glaucoma because that's acute swelling behind the eye. But it's more likely going to be given for an intracranial swelling, acute intracranial swelling. So that was what I noticed people got wrong collectively. There are, of course, other things that people got wrong in terms of medication, some of which we hadn't talked about yet. So always look at what they gave you as a remediation so you can see if there's something that you should add to your studying. So ATI Practice B is also open, and I encourage you to use it in the same way that we use Practice A. Go through it, see if you can, if you score better than you did on Practice A, look at what it says you should focus on. I will look at what people have, if you do it, and I'll look it over and be sure if there's anything that we didn't talk about that I can do the same thing. But that's that part. Anybody have questions about the ATIs in general? I hope you can still hear me. I just got like a thing on my screen that said connection issues, so hopefully there's not an issue, but okay, good. It might have been fleeting. Last week I kept getting bumped off. I just never know when that's going to happen. It's kind of frustrating. So, network issues are keeping you from sharing notes. Well, that's okay. All fixed. Having network issues. I'm hoping that you can still hear me. But we're getting close to lunch break, so we'll stop here and return at 1 o'clock. Have a good break.